Hey there, focus learners. Welcome back. Let's just dive right into this. We all know the NEET prep journey is, well, it's a total roller coaster, right? Full of mixed emotions, nervous energy, and those really intense study blocks. If you're targeting that upcoming June 22nd, 2026 exam date, you are exactly in the right place. Consider this explainer your strategic battle plan. We're going to break down the precise playbook you need from our source materials to finally hit that ultimate 700 plus marks target. Let's do this.
But before we hit the heavy science, I really want to anchor us with this quote straight from our source material. Whatever's going to happen, there should be no regret, just give your best. I want you to take a deep breath and just let that resonate for a second. Look, deciding to tackle a Re-Neet attempt, that takes immense courage, seriously. It's time to let go of any anxiety about the past. You've already put in the hours of groundwork, so today is entirely about fine-tuning your strategy, lowering that cognitive load, and sharpening your active recall for the big day.
So, here's the exact structure of our rapid-fire review today. Number 1, we're conquering exam time pressure. Number 2, we'll tackle some high-weightage genetics and physiology problems. 3, we're demystifying tricky biology cycles. And finally, number 4, spotting the patterns in frequent previous year questions.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, conquering exam time pressure, where speed absolutely must meet accuracy.
You know, it's crazy how easily simple traps can cost you valuable marks when that clock is ticking. Our source data repeatedly emphasizes that rushing just leads to misreading prompts. It happens all the time. For example, in taxonomy questions, students frequently mark the family when the questions specifically ask for the order, like bubbling in equidae instead of perissodactyla for a horse. Another major pitfall? Negative phrasing. When you're scanning fast, your brain just automatically skips words like not true or incorrect statement. To combat this, you've got to employ what we call the active pen technique. Literally underline or circle negative keywords the actual second you read them. This physical action forces your brain to register the negative framing. And honestly, it's your absolute best defense against silly mistakes under pressure. Okay, moving right along to section 2, high-weightage genetics and physiology. It's time to shift gears, get highly analytical, and practice some active recall. Okay, let's dive into this classic high-yield genetics math problem. It's a great one. If an RNA sequence has 999 bases and the base at position 901 is altered, exactly how many codons will be altered? I want you to mentally lock in your answer right now. Actually, scratch that. Pause this explainer for 5 seconds, grab a piece of scrap paper, and do the actual math. Seriously, try it. Got it? So the crucial point here is deeply understanding the reading frame. Since 3 sequential bases make up exactly 1 codon, 999 bases give you exactly 333 total codons. Now, everything up to base 900 is perfectly normal. If we divide that 900 by 3, we see that the first 300 codons are completely unaffected. They're good to go. The mutation happens at position 901. That leaves 99 bases from 901 up to 999 that will be read differently because the frame has shifted or altered. Divide those remaining 99 bases by 3, and you get exactly 33 altered codons. It's just simple division, really, but under the extreme pressure of the exam hall, mapping it out logically like this entirely prevents panic. Let's keep this genetics momentum going with Okazaki fragments. Our source specifically flags the directionality here for bacterial DNA replication. These fragments form the lagging strand, and they grow away from the replication fork. It helps to think of the lagging strand kind of like a road being paved backward in chunks. Because DNA polymerase can only build in one direction, the machinery literally has to keep jumping backward to synthesize these short segments. It's moving strictly away from the fork, which is totally unlike that continuous leading strand. Next up, we have a core biotechnology definition that frequently pops up and, for sure, trips people up. A selectable marker. What is it? It's a gene whose expression helps to identify a transformed cell. This matters immensely because exam setters absolutely love to trick you by swapping the definition of a selectable marker with the origin of replication, or ORI. Just remember this: ORI starts the copying process, but the selectable marker, like an antibiotic resistance gene for instance, is your diagnostic tool. It's how you differentiate the successful transformants from the non-transformants. All right, let's shift gears over to plant physiology. This next question is a notorious trap that catches literally thousands of students off guard. What exactly facilitates the opening of the stomatal aperture? Now, it's not just about general turgidity. There is a highly specific structural phrase you need to scan for in those multiple choice options. And here is the exact precise mechanism from the source: the radial orientation of cellulose microfibrils in the cell wall of guard cells. The inner walls are thick, the outer walls are thin. And it's this radial arrangement that makes the magic happen. But why radial? Well, imagine if the fibers were longitudinal, running top to bottom. When the guard cells swelled with water, it would just get taller and longer, but the pore wouldn't actually open. Because the fibers are arranged radially, kind of like the ribs of a fan, swelling forces the cells to bow outward. That physically pulls that central pore open. So lock that keyword radial into your memory right now. Moving from microstructures to macro relationships, let's look at mycorrhiza to wrap up this physiology section. Exam setters love testing ecological interactions, we know this. Mycorrhiza is a mutualistic, symbiotic association specifically between the roots of higher plants and fungal hyphae. You absolutely must lock in the fact that this is mutualistic, not parasitic. The fungus dramatically increases the surface area for absorbing water and minerals, while the plant provides the fungus with energy-yielding carbohydrates. Both parties actively win here. It's a true partnership.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how we untangle things. Let's move to section 3, demystifying tricky biology cycles step by step.
One of the most common student errors in the Krebs cycle happens right at the starting line. Students often rush and think acetyl-CoA condenses with pyruvic acid to start the cycle. Nope, that is incorrect. Think of this like a biochemical bakery. Acetyl-CoA is your fresh ingredient coming in from glycolysis, but it has to combine with the existing leftover starter dough that's already in the oven, and that's oxaloacetate. When the fresh acetyl-CoA mixes with the starter oxaloacetate, they yield your very first baked product, citric acid. Furthermore, you absolutely need to memorize the exact energetic yield of this cycle. A single turn yields exactly 3 NADH2, 1 FADH2, and 1 GTP. Think of this using an energy currency analogy. GTP is your ready cash, right? Immediately spendable. NADH2 and FADH2, on the other hand, are like high-value checks. They represent a lot of energy, but you have to take them to the bank, which in this case is the electron transport chain, to actually cash them out for usable ATP. Keeping this financial summary rapid and ready in your mind is going to save you crucial minutes on those calculation questions.
Okay, let's move to the light reactions in photosynthesis. Specifically, the Z-scheme electron flow. Honestly, think of the Z-scheme exactly like a giant pinball machine. The electron is the ball. It gets blasted up to a high energy level by light hitting photosystem 2. Then it bounces down a ramp, first hitting plastoquinone, then bouncing over to the cytochrome B6F complex. Once it's at the bottom, it gets hit by another flipper at photosystem 1, rocketing up again before finally landing securely in the NADP reductase pocket to create NADPH. Our source highlights this exact step-by-step pinball sequence as a highly repeated exam target, so you definitely want to visualize it this way.
And now for our final module, Section 4, Frequent Previous Year Questions. Spotting the patterns here? That's your ultimate cheat code. First up is a massive pattern from ecology. You must be able to definitively separate in situ and ex situ conservation. So the crucial point is looking at the location. In situ literally means on-site, protecting the animal in its natural wild habitat, like national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Ex situ is off-site, meaning human intervention has physically moved the animal to a special, separate habitat to protect it. And here is the insider tip so you don't get tricked. Do not let the word wildlife in wildlife safari trick you. A safari park is human-managed and off-site, making it strictly ex situ, just exactly like a zoo. Another massive pattern from past papers is the quality versus quantity trap in genetic blood disorders. Examiners absolutely love comparing these two. Sickle cell anemia is a qualitative disorder. That means the actual structure of the hemoglobin molecule is flawed, changing the shape and the quality of the red blood cells. Thalassemia, on the other hand, is a quantitative disorder. The hemoglobin structure itself is fine, but the body synthesizes drastically less of it, resulting in a much lower quantity overall. Quality versus quantity, make absolutely sure you lock that distinction in.
Next, we have a classic match-the-column topic, sexually transmitted infections and their causative agents. Now, instead of just staring at this list hoping it sticks, look for the word associations to really lock it in. Gonorrhea pairs perfectly with the bacteria Neisseria. Syphilis is caused by Treponema pallidum, and genital warts are caused by the human papillomavirus. For that last one, the hint is literally right in the name. Papillomas are warts. Our source analysis shows you will almost certainly see some variation of these exact pairings, so connect the terms right now and save yourself the stress later.
700. That is the ultimate target score, right? By employing the active pen technique to avoid those negative keyword mistakes, utilizing active recall for high-weightage math and physiology topics,
clearly visualizing the analogies of biological cycles, and mastering the strict patterns of past papers. You're building the exact strategic framework needed to push your score right past that 700 mark on June 22nd, 2026.
Which brings us to our final, empowering thought. Have you identified your weakest links yet? Think about it. Every single mistake you make in practice today is a gap you won't have on June 22nd. Embrace those errors now. Review them relentlessly. Trust the immense and courageous preparation you've done for this Re-Neet attempt. And when you finally step into that exam hall, give it absolutely everything you have, with zero regrets. Go claim that 700 plus. Until next time, keep learning and stay intensely focused.